They said she wouldn't survive the night. They didn't know what a mother would do to prove them wrong. The hospital room was a cold, sterile prison. The beeping of the machines was a cruel countdown, each second slipping away like grains of sand in an hourglass. My daughter, Mia, lay motionless, her tiny body dwarfed by the tangle of wires and tubes. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, and her breaths were shallow, barely there. The doctors had given up. "She has a few hours left," they said, their voices heavy with finality. But I refused to accept it. Couldn't. Not when I knew there was still a way to save her. The experimental drug was my last hope. It wasn't FDA approved. It wasn't legal. But it had worked on others, children like Mia who had been written off as lost causes. The hospital wouldn't give it to me. "It's impossible to get," the doctor said, his tone dismissive. But impossible wasn't a word I could afford to believe. Not when my daughter's life hung in the balance. I kissed Mia's forehead, her skin cold against my lips. "Hold on, baby," I whispered. "I'll be back." And with that, I stepped out of the hospital and into a world I had never dared to enter. A world of shadows, danger, and desperation. The bar was dimly lit, the air thick with smoke and the stench of cheap whiskey. Vince Moretti sat in the corner, a cigar dangling from his fingers. His cold, calculating eyes locked onto mine as I approached. "Emily Carter," he said, smirking. "Didn't think I'd ever see you here. You must be desperate." "I need the drug," I said, my voice steady despite the fear clawing at my chest. "The experimental one. The one hospitals won't give." Vince leaned back, exhaling a cloud of smoke. "That's a dangerous request. That stuff's worth a fortune. People would kill for it." "I don't care," I said. "I'll pay whatever it costs." He chuckled, a low, menacing sound. "Oh, sweetheart, it's not about money." His smirk widened. "I need a favor." My stomach churned. I knew whatever he was about to ask would be bad. Very bad. But Mia's face flashed in my mind. Her fragile body, her weakening pulse. I had no choice. "What kind of favor?" I whispered. Vince leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone. "There's a package I need delivered. Nothing too crazy. Just a little something that needs to get from point A to point B. Without the cops sniffing around." My blood ran cold. He was asking me to be a drug mule. But Mia's life was on the line. "Fine," I said, my voice barely audible. His grin widened. "Good girl. You deliver the package, you get your miracle drug. But if you screw this up, well, let's just say I won't be so friendly next time." The delivery was supposed to be simple. Drive to an abandoned warehouse, hand over the package, and leave. No questions, no delays. But nothing ever goes as planned. As I pulled into the warehouse district, my nerves were already on edge. The streets were eerily empty, the flickering streetlights casting long, ominous shadows. The man I was supposed to meet, a tall figure in a dark hoodie, stepped out from the shadows. "You're late," he muttered. I didn't care. I just wanted to get this over with. I held out the bag. "Here, take it." But then sirens, flashing lights, police cars skidded to a stop around us, officers jumping out with guns drawn. "Freeze! Hands in the air!" Panic exploded in my chest. The man in the hoodie bolted, disappearing into the darkness. I stood there, frozen, the bag still clutched in my trembling hands. "Ma'am, drop the bag!" an officer shouted. Tears blurred my vision. If I got arrested now, if I went to jail, Mia would die. That thought snapped something inside me. I couldn't let that happen. I ran. The hospital was a blur of white walls and fluorescent lights. I staggered inside, battered and bleeding, clutching the tiny vial like it was the only thing keeping me alive. "Give this to my daughter," I gasped to the nurse. "Now." The nurses hesitated, but one look at my face, at my desperation, and they rushed to Mia's room. I collapsed to my knees, barely able to breathe. Minutes felt like hours. Then a voice. "She's stabilizing." I let out a sob, my body shaking. Mia was going to live. I had broken the law. risked everything. But I didn't regret a thing, because a mother's love has no limits. But the nightmare wasn't over. The police found me. Vince found me. And when the devil comes to collect, there's no place to hide. Detective Calloway offered me a way out. Testify against Vince, reduce my sentence. But Vince wasn't the kind of man you crossed and lived to tell the tale. The choice was clear. Betray Vince and risk my life, or spend the next 20 years behind bars, leaving Mia to grow up without me. I chose to fight. The safe house was an old warehouse on the edge of the city. Vince sat alone, smoking a cigar, his smirk as cold as ever. "You don't have the guts," he said when I aimed the gun at his head. But he was wrong. I did, because this wasn't about me anymore. It was about Mia. I pulled the trigger. 6 months later, I stood outside the hospital, holding Mia in my arms. She was laughing, her tiny hands reaching for my face. No more running, no more fear. I had done terrible things, but I had done them for the right reasons. And in the end, I won. Fire the end. Fire.